2.
What's up, Mafia Nation? Welcome back. It's LVT.
I'm MAGZ.
And we're here to do another reaction video for you. Let's go.
Alright, tonight we're checking out the Attack of the Dead Men gas warfare on the Eastern Front. This is the Sabaton History Channel. Her and I did the reaction to the Attack of the Dead Men live. By you guys' suggestions that we're going to start doing more of the history before we listen to the songs or see the videos.
Yeah.
So we figured before we start any more, we should at least do the history. Yeah. And it looks like I said, this one's gas on the Eastern Front, which makes more sense as to why they were all wearing the gas mask now. So I'm super interested in this, and like I know that was a big thing during World War I. So.
Yeah, I'm excited to figure out what the actual story is. From what you guys told us in the comments, it sounds like it's like a really like gory, detailed story. So I'm excited to see what they have to fill us in about.
Before we get into that, though,
make sure you subscribe.
Smash on that notification bell.
And like, comment, and share with your friends, because
sharing is caring, and caring is sharing.
Unless you're getting mustard gas thrown at you.
Share the mustard gas.
I'm Indy Nidell.
And I'm Pat from Sabaton.
And this is Sabaton History.
That's cool.
There are a lot of legendary tales that came out of the Great War.
Yeah, and the song Attack of the Dead Men talks about one of the most legendary.
And the strangest.
And the most legendary.
Yeah, but the strangest.
And maybe most legendary.
So World War I, the Great War.
Big brother, back from the Great War.
Osowiec Fortress was built in the late 19th century on a strategic hotspot near the river Biebrzy in what is now Poland, but back then was the Russian Empire. It was just about 50 kilometers away from East Prussia, though, along the important railway line from Bialystok to Königsberg, which conveniently...
East Prussia?
Countries that no longer exist.
Okay, well...
Like I said, what it's now Poland, but it used to be part of the Russian Empire. Like,
okay.
Yeah, a lot of...
Again, we're from America. They don't teach us this stuff. I've never heard that word in my life.
We've learned a little bit of it in Make America world history and stuff. Not a lot, but like a little bit. And like, there's always countries over there over the last couple hundred years have been changing and renaming, and borders changed, and countries dividing and joining.
I know that, but listen, I think your schooling might have been a lot better than mine.
Not much.
Prussia, though, along the important railway line from Bialystok to Königsberg, which conveniently ran straight through the fortress. So it's kind of obvious why this was quite a headache for German high command in the Great War. This close to the German border, and effectively controlling one of the few railway lines through all the bogs and marshes in the area, the fortress had to either be taken or destroyed. Otherwise, it would prevent any advance into northern Poland. In fact, the Germans had tried to take the fortress back in September 1914 and again in February 1915, where the second attack had severely damaged much of the fortress defenses through heavy bombing. But the main defensive ring had nonetheless held long enough for the Russian counterattacks to force the attackers to break off. By the summer of 1915, though, the Kaiser's army was determined to try again. Now, August von Mackenson's Gorlitzer Tarnov offensive that summer had thrown much of the Russian forces on the Eastern Front off balance, and German and Austro-Hungarian forces advanced on a wide front eastwards. Seeing their chance, German high command wanted to also take Poland in a frontal attack and ordered Generalfeldmarschall Paul von Hindenburg on the offensive. Osowiec Fortress was an important prize to take from the weakened Russian army. So 12 German infantry battalions, accompanied by up to 30 heavy artillery pieces, set their sights on Osowiec. The core of the Russian defenders, under General Lieutenant Berzhozovsky's command, was made up of around 500 men from the 226th Infantry Regiment Zemlyansky, supported by several hundred militia. They dug in several lines of defenses and redoubts, trying to give the German artillery as small a target as possible. But once the assault...
That makes me claustrophobic.
Oh, yeah. A lot of the war parts were fought in trenches like that. Like, they would literally spend months at a time stuck in these trenches. Like, especially there, I forget where it was, but there was one battlefield that they were just stuck there for years, just with trenches, and these guys lived there for years.
That is so insane. Like, shout out to our freaking veterans, man, because, like,
trying to give the German
that's
artillery
insane.
as small a target
Warfare's
as
a
possible.
little different nowadays,
Once
but
the assault
with
began,
the weaponry they had
much
back
of the
then,
fortress
trenches
walls,
were the way to go.
barracks, and towers began to crack under the heavy German siege artillery. But artillery alone won't take the fortress. They would still need the infantry for that job, and the Russians had enough machine guns and defensive works to make that very difficult and very costly. The Germans, though, brought in a fairly new and extremely dangerous weapon: gas. Now, gas warfare was fairly new. In 1914, the French had used tear gas, and in early 1915, the Germans had first used poison gas at Bolimov, though that failed. Since then, however, it had had a devastating effect on the totally unprepared and ill-equipped Russian soldiers, who died gruesome and horrible deaths in the deadly clouds of gas. Without gas masks to protect themselves, the defenders of Osovets were expected to suffer the same fate. In the early morning of August 6th,
That would be a horrible
as
way
the
to
winds
go.
were finally favorable, the German gas batteries opened up. A dark green smog descended upon the battered defensive works. The wave of gas crept over the Russian lines, creating a death zone. The gas used was made out of a mixture of chlorine and bromine. While the bromine acted as a respiratory irritant, the chlorine attacked the lungs, chemically burning them, right? The chlorine attached itself to moisture in the air, turning it to hydrochloric acid, which then bit into the membranes and flesh of the lungs, aggressively dissolving the soft tissue. The Russian soldiers were literally choking on their own blood, as every breath they took destroyed their lungs. Unable to breathe, they died in agony, coughing out bloody lumps of their own lungs. But it was not only the lungs that suffered, as the acid attacked the soft tissues of the eyes and noses, burning them chemically as well. The soldiers burned from the inside out. Many died within the first few minutes. Those further away from the initial attack tried binding.
Can we focus on the fact that he said burn from the inside out?
Yeah. That's what happens with chlorine, man. That's why you're not supposed to mix certain things with chlorine, because it makes the gas, and it's deadly.
It's gross.
Those further away from the initial attack tried binding wet rags and urine-soaked shirts around their faces in a desperate attempt to protect themselves,
Just
but that
makes it
often
worse.
helped little. Everything the wave of gas
'cause
came in
it said it
contact with
clings to the
began to
moisture.
die. Leaves and grass turned yellow and black. It killed the insects and the animals in the woods. There was no escaping, as the gas crept into every ditch and into every
Burned
hole,
the
even
grass.
attaching itself to the brass of guns and shells. The defenders suffered heavy losses, and whole companies in the foremost
my
trenches were
gosh.
simply wiped out. Only around 100 men in the defensive lines further back survived, still terribly burned. As the gas dissipated, German infantry battalions formed up. While other units went to secure the railway line, it was up to these 7,000 men of the German 76th Landwehr Division to storm the main defensive lines in front of the fortress. Confident that most of the defenders had been wiped out and that the few left would be overcome with ease, the German infantry moved onwards. The first lines were indeed littered with only the dead, grotesquely deformed in their final moments of inevitable death. The end. Or was it?
Or was it?
As the German troops moved onward over the shelled-out ground, they suddenly came under heavy fire. The fortress artillery opened up on them, and machine gun fire tore holes in their ranks. Further out on the flanks, the last Russian reserve companies coming up from the rear formed to counterattack the German infantry.
Oh, man.
Seeing those friendly reinforcements rush in with their bayonets attached, the 100-odd survivors in the trenches also emerged. Bayonets fixed, they stumbled like zombies out of their dugouts,
That makes
crawling
sense why they were
and
doing
limping
the
their way into the
zombie
open.
walks during the video.
Complete shock stopped.
I just want to say, like, how impressive that is. Like, I get it now, Attack of the Dead Men, because the guys that were barely alive, but, like, even though they lived, they probably couldn't have lived much longer after that, because it literally just ate their eyes and their lungs, and but they had to have been barely alive, but, like, were still pressing onward, like,
For their country.
that is amazing. Like, the agony they must have been, but still got up to march forward and attack the foe is just...
Yeah.
Complete shock stopped the German attackers dead in their tracks. Like dead men returning to life, the Russian survivors came on, heavily breathing, gasping for air through destroyed lungs, their faces scarred by chemical burns, half hidden with bloody rags. They marched on, thirsting for revenge for the terrible fate thrust upon them. Their tears were bloody, their eyes burned red. They spat blood and parts of their lungs as they advanced, croaking and coughing like the living dead. This horrible sight, as well as the unexpected counterattack, halted the Germans.
They were probably scared out of their fucking minds.
They hastily withdrew, soon running away in terror as the panic spread through their ranks, pushing their comrades aside, trampling over each other, stumbling over barbed wire as Russian artillery shells fell in between them. The attack of the dead men came on, accompanied by a bayonet charge of the reserves, and recaptured the lost trenches. By 11 a.m., a few hours after the deadly gas attack, the defensive lines were back in Russian control. The Germans had withdrawn back to their own starting positions. Okay, much of the battle remains shrouded in legends and mystery, and that is likely to remain so. The casualty numbers on either side are unknown, as are the German records of this battle, though it was certainly a well-deserved tactical victory of a small Russian force over a much larger German force. Strategically, it did little to preserve the Russian hold on Poland, and Osowiec Fortress had to be given up weeks later as it was too damaged and the whole front had to pull back anyhow. And since, after the Russian revolutions of 1917, this war was viewed by the Soviet Union as a capitalist war and a source of shame. It was largely edited or written out in their history books. Nowadays, post-Soviet Union, however, the legend of the Attack of the Dead Men is gaining more attention as Russia's interest in the Great War increases, and the legend is certainly a tale worth telling. That is beyond dispute.
Okay, so I don't feel so bad now about not knowing a lot of this history, because they said it was written out of a lot of textbooks and history books. So I don't feel as bad for not knowing this one now. Still.
Such a good song.
The whole song Attack of the Dead Man, it was one of those like super like, okay, we're gonna do an album about World War One.
Yeah.
And when I was presenting the idea to our record label Nuclear Blast, they were like, okay, so you're gonna have a song about gas? And I was like, yeah, sure, there will be such song. We didn't know exactly how we're gonna cover it, like in which area, but the story of the Dead Man was one of the absolutely like most legendary ones that we definitely felt that we needed to get in. And then that's the Osowiec Fortress. That's where we get in the...
Have you been there?
No, I never been there. But we've received a lot of fan mails saying like, this is something we really should write a song about. So in the end we did. And we had a little bit of a special way of revealing the song to the fans. Because in Russia there's this guy who is famous as Radio Tapok. He's got a very popular YouTube channel. He's a touring heavy metal musician who does cover songs of bands like Sabaton, but he translates them into Russian.
Okay.
So I asked him, would you be willing to do a song which nobody has ever heard, and do it? You translate it into Russian, and you release it before us. And he was like, "That's a weird thing. I never heard it."
That's weird.
Yeah. So he before anybody has heard the song,
It's different.
he heard it, he recorded it, he translated it into Russian, and he made a music video for it and put it out. I think that was interesting way. A lot of people said I'm crazy when I come with such a marketing idea.
I mean, you could have sued him for millions of dollars.
Yeah, that could have been. That could have been the case. Like, hey, you stole our song.
You told me. Why would I tell you to?
But we actually gave him the song, and it was very popular, and he did a good job. And maybe we can listen to a little bit of Russian version of it.
I hope so.
So is that their Leo?
Maybe. Ooh. That's a cool way of portraying it, bro.
Now, since people were asking you to write lots of stuff about the First World War, and you got, about the Red Baron, Lawrence of Arabia, which one was the topic that most people asked you to write a song about?
About World War One.
Yeah.
And the most requests are for the Christmas truce.
Ah, okay.
Funny enough, but we didn't have a song that fitted to it, so we couldn't get it in. But second most wanted song was Attack of the Dead Men.
It's interesting because I didn't know that story before I started writing The Great War, but I'm a historian, and you think, but it's really the last few years it's become so much more. People know so much more about it. So.
And guess where I found out about it, mainly.
Oh yeah,
From you. So
that's my job.
well, we have the fans as well, but where we were looking for information about it was mainly from you.
Huh. Well, it's nice that I can change the world one person at a time, or one metal band at a time. Now, I mentioned
One
before
metal band at a
in the history bit that there's not a lot of specific history about this specific battle. Like, there's so many things we don't know because so many of the records were destroyed or mislaid or intentionally destroyed during the Soviet Union because World War I was not a patriotic war.
They're burning
It was,
through
the imperialist
gas
war.
and leaves
It's the
and
problem that we
trees.
often
Paper
face.
ain't got a
People
chance.
say, oh, here is a
No, a lot of it was destroyed. Like, a lot of records got destroyed during the wars and stuff, just because blowing up, your opponent's bases and stuff. Especially when back then a lot of their things were paper documents because they didn't have computers. But like he said here, the Russians were actually the ones destroying it because it wasn't a patriotic war and stuff like that. And
The imperialist war.
It's the problem that we often face.
Yeah.
People say, "Oh, here is a story," and then you can't find the proper information about it. These days, it's so much easier. But going back to the beginning when we started to write about it, it was not easy for us to find information.
Sure.
I mean, people who are into history, people who are historians, they
That's
know where
gotta
to
be
search,
hard
where
though,
to
to
find.
write
They
a
have
full
the networks to find it.
concept album and not be able to
stand
find a
in
lot
the
of.
beginning absolutely alone. We didn't even have the fans.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful for where we stand now, where we have good contacts like you, for example,
Well,
very
I've got,
good
like,
reference for
I got,
World War One.
like historians like Marcus and Vika and stuff that
Perfect
say hi,
people.
guys. There you go.
They're our awesome team
Yeah.
who can help us with coming up with the information. But in the beginning, it was really difficult.
Well, you mentioned the Christmas truce, and people asked a lot during the Great War, and they still ask, like, well, did they try anything like that on the Eastern Front? Because the Christmas truce was on the Western Front. And they're like, yeah, how come there was nothing like that on the Eastern Front? There's a very simple reason why there wasn't on the Eastern Front.
Orthodox.
That's the truth. Some Russian soldiers did try an Easter truce in 1916. They came out of their trenches on Easter, to start the same sort of thing, and they were all shot at and taken prisoner by the Germans and the Austrians because they used a different calendar, and it was 13 days different, so it was not Easter to the Germans and Austrians. They just saw a bunch of Russians walking out of their trenches, hanging out, and going, "Hey, come on, here's some drinks." And shot at them. I wouldn't have shot at them. Drinks are drinks. Never look a free drink in. Well,
True.
Makes sense. I'll shut up. You can edit that out.
but they
What do you
didn't.
Oh yeah.
I'm having drinks.
All right. Well, since it's drinking
He's gonna
time, I
bring
guess
us
it's
a
time for us to
bottle I
say
need it.
goodbye. Fair?
Yeah, it is. And thank you for everybody for watching this episode.
Of Sabaton history.
Listen to me, everybody. We love the Sabaton History channel. If you do it, please share it with us. Support it on Patreon, YouTube, and any way you want. Thank you for your support. Let's do this forever.
Forever. That was really cool though. It was cool to learn about like the history behind the story that we already got to, hear musically.
Yes, indeed. Like I said, I didn't feel so bad once he said that most of the documents were destroyed for it, and up until recent years they didn't know much about it, so that was awesome. Still crazy story.
Yeah.
Like, oh man.
Gory, gross, real gross.
Yeah, but the way that they still were able to climb out of those trenches, and phenomenal.
Yeah.
Thank you guys again for suggesting that we do this, check out the Sabaton history.
Mm-hmm.
We're learning so much more, and like I feel like it's just making the songs that much more powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, if you guys want to see more stuff like this from us, be sure to leave it in the comments below or in our Discord. Or if you want to get bumped to the absolute top of the list, you can leave a donation and we will see it much faster than everything else because we do have quite the influx of requests coming in currently at the moment.
Which is phenomenal to me because when we first started this, I wasn't expecting this. So
No,
thank
me
you guys
neither.
so much. And I've learned so much music and so much history. You guys are awesome. We are working on a Patreon for you guys as well. So keep an eye out for that. We're constantly making changes like this lovely new background that we have behind us. Let us know what you guys think about it. Also check out any of our scrolling social medias below.
Scrollies.
Get to see a little bit of behind the scenes and get to know us. But yeah, until next time.